We're at the Roche-Moutonnet stop on the road between Grantown and Spey and Carbridge, and they are lovely Roche-Moutonnet, but actually the rocks themselves tell a very interesting story. So you can see that the rock that I'm sitting on is a very highly folded schist. If I try and follow the folding, it's very difficult because it's so folded and refolded. It goes down and up and round, and so this has been very highly deformed. And it's gone into the lower crust, and in fact it's got sufficiently hot that it started to melt. So these regions here, which you can see are much paler, and they have quartz and feldspar, quite large crystals of quartz and feldspar, and large micas which aren't oriented parallel to the schist. These were bits of granite. So this has started to melt, and the granite has started to become extracted from the schist that was melting. So that places the temperature at perhaps 650, 700 degrees C, and the depth in the lower crust at least 40 kilometers, let's say. But if you look behind me, they're the cairngorms. So they're a really large granite mass, and they were formed by partial melting of the lower crust, just like we're seeing here. And then they were emplaced into these rocks. And the depth of emplacement, we can measure that from the minerals that are in the cairngorms and in the metamorphic rocks around it, was perhaps 4 to 7 kilometers depth, so quite shallow in the upper crust. So we have lower crustal rocks which have had granites emplaced into them in the upper crust. So that means there must be at least 2 phases of mountain building. These things, rocks that I'm sitting on, were formed and metamorphosed in the lower crust. Then they were exhumed to quite shallow depths, 4 kilometers, 5, 6 kilometers, and then still in the lower crust under a mountain chain, the cairngorm granite was produced that came up and then was emplaced into these lower crustal rocks here that were at the surface. So we must have at least 2 phases of mountain building, and in fact the Caledonian Orogeny has 3 phases of mountain building. These rocks that we're seeing here, they were metamorphosed during the early Grampian phase. The cairngorms were made and emplaced during the Scandian phase, which was about 50 million years or so after the Grampian phase. And then there's an even later phase in the Devonian that we don't see locally here.